Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Dan Hinz from Dan Hinz Coaching, talking about your family budget. Dan, we just sold a car that we owned for a long time.
Okay.
And I know buying and selling cars can be intimidating for a lot of people.
Yes, it can.
And I know for me, I just hate walking out to car lots and dealing with salesmen, and I know a lot of people do.
Sure.
What's better? I mean, should we lease? Should we buy? Should we get a used car? I mean,
Those are all good questions.
What should you consider?
Right. Well, let's look at it from the dealership perspective. They do make the most money off of customers from leasing a car, because I mean, really, when you're leasing, you're just renting the car for a couple years, and you can only put so many miles on it. And at the end of the lease, you've got to decide: well, do I want to buy this car for a certain price that we signed for, or am I going to just start leasing a different car? And so there's a decision you have to make with that. It is usually better and lower cost if you go ahead and buy the car. Now, when you buy a car, you've either got to get a car loan, maybe from the dealership or a bank that you know and trust, or you can just buy it with cash, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And so
well,
I would.
Most of us can't buy a car with cash.
Right.
Unless you're buying a clunker or something. I mean, you know.
And it really depends upon your situation. So my wife and I, we were in a situation where she was unfortunately in a car accident and it totaled the car. Everybody was okay. So I mean, there are no bad stories there. But we got the check for the insurance, and we were saving up for a new car. But we didn't quite have enough to get the car she wanted. We had half. So we had a decision to make to say, okay, well, do we want to avoid debt and just use that cash that we have and get, kind of a cheap car and save up for the car she really wants, or just go ahead and finance the second half? And so we, as a couple, we sat down and decided, you know what, it's, as far as a loan is concerned, it's not that much. And so we ended up go ahead and getting a car loan for the second half. We signed up for, I think, 5 years, but we paid it off in 5 months. Because we just said we're going to get a loan, but we want to pay it off as fast as humanly possible. So now we own both of our cars. So in the situation that we're in right now is that if we want a new car a couple years down the road, we could start saving maybe $100 a month until we save up for a new car, and we could just buy it with cash all over again.
And we talked a little bit before the show, but I have a friend who got an inheritance.
Yes.
And he went to a financial advisor and said, well, I want to pay off the car. And the financial advisor said, what do you want to do that for? Everybody has a car payment. The opportunity cost of putting that money into this depreciating asset we call a car really isn't worth it for some people, is it? Are you better off just making the payments and taking that lump sum and investing it and having that money work for you?
That's a good question. You could do it either way. I mean, it depends on everyone's situation. But for me personally, and what I try to teach my clients is that let's get out of debt. Because especially if you have a loan on the car, is that's interest going out the door. Whether you'd rather invest it and get money coming in the door. However, when it comes to inheritance, a lot of times that money is going to be stuck in a retirement account, and if you're taking money out in some fashion, you might get taxed, or there might be some penalties with that. But really, when it comes to getting a car or saving for retirement, you got to start talking about what you want. And like you said, a lot of people will take and pay off the car, and they'll keep it for 10 years until it dies, and then they'll go get a new car.
That's us. My wife drove a minivan for a decade.
Yes, absolutely.
We kept fixing that thing and fixing that thing until it got to the point where she was like, I'm embarrassed driving this thing now. All right, it's time for a new car.
And you know what? And it happens where a car will get to a point where it costs too much to keep it. Whether it's better to just go ahead and get a new car or start saving up for a new car and replace that at some point. In fact, it just happened in the news that Warren Buffett sold his car. They did a charity auction, and it sold for about $122,000, but it was charity, and it went to Girls Inc. in Omaha. But it was a Cadillac. It was a 2006 Cadillac.
Warren Buffett drove a 2006.
The car was worth about $12,000 if you would have bought it on Kelley Blue Book. So here's the second richest person in the world, maybe third richest, and he had a $12,000 car. So when I talk to my clients about buying cars, is that a $6,000 car will get you to work. A $60,000 car will get you to work just as slowly. I mean, depending on traffic, if you're going to pay an extra 10, 30 grand, is that actually really helping you any?
So really, when it comes to buying a car and financing, it's really up to the individual and what they're comfortable with. You're not comfortable with debt, so you just assume pay it off. And
try to get it paid off, but it really depends on your goals. Are you trying to save for retirement? Do you have an emergency cash account? So there's a lot to think about in life. Like my wife and I, we decided a small loan for a little bit is okay, but it's up to you.
Dan Hinz, thank you for that sage advice on car buying, and we'll see you next time.